So let me officially kick things off. So today we're going to be talking about managing your product database and how to keep it healthy, some basic do's and don'ts. We have Jason Master, our tech support lead, who will help and really guide us through the best practices. Like I said, he will give us at the end opportunity to ask questions, so maybe 15, 20 minutes of his presentation, and then at the end we can definitely tackle him with whatever we're not sure about. Jason, do you want to kick it off?
Sure.
Awesome. Just super quickly, Jason, how long have you been with PourMyBeer? Can you tell them just to build a little bit of credibility?
About 5.5 years.
Awesome. Yeah. Sometimes Jason has been one of the first employees, just so you know, and he pretty much touches every aspect of the project. He's been doing and been in a part of anything from drawing to wiring diagram, managing logistics. He's an integral part in ensuring our perfect record when it comes to our customer satisfaction and really making sure that every part of the process is as smooth as possible. Jason has helped to bring us where we are today, continues to help us growing as a company, and I don't think you can have anybody as technical to help you with managing the product database and give you more information on that. All right, Jason, I'll pass the word to you. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining us this morning, everyone. As Tanya mentioned, my name's Jason Masters. I touch many aspects of the business, but support is kind of where I spend a lot of my time these days. I've done, like she mentioned, I've done project management, I do logistics, done everything basically but sales. So what I wanted to talk about today is kind of this, a light topic for kind of a quick call this morning is managing the product database. Okay, so obviously today where we're going to be spending time is in the product database, which is I'm seeing a lot of familiar names here, so not anything new to anyone here, but this is the meat and potatoes of what is kind of customer facing in terms of your products and their descriptions, what kind of beer it is, how much it's going to cost, the image, all that stuff. One thing I did want to touch on real quickly is kind of just the quick aspects of what we're seeing here. The screen is pretty busy, but a lot of it, it's not very complicated, but there's a lot going on. So our first item up is our PLU number. That's product lookup number. That is a number for the database to identify different products. To us as people in the meat space, as I like to call it, it doesn't really matter. That number is pretty arbitrary. But for the machine, it just says, hey, this entry is different than this entry with a different PLU. You can't have duplicate PLUs. The database won't let you. It will literally error and say, hey, that PLU is already used. So kind of manages that for you, which is nice. The product name is pretty self-explanatory. One thing I did want to touch on is when integrations are involved, don't have products that have the same name. We've seen that happen a couple of times, and that can cause confusion when integrating with like Toast or Clover or some of our other integrations that we have, because that will essentially bucket anything that's poured into that one product, even though like if you have like Blue Moon Peach versus regular Blue Moon, just make sure they're named different names to avoid that kind of confusion. Volume units per serving, that one's pretty important. It needs to be somewhat managed, as we use ounces for our volume units. We do have some European locations and other locations in other parts of the world, so they use milliliters. So we do need to be able to differentiate between those volume units. So 16 ounces is a typical pint. When you start getting into wines and very high ABV beers, you kind of want to maybe tone that down a bit. Maybe 8 ounces, 6 ounces, 3 ounces. That has to be managed by a human being. We've got our price per unit. Happy hour prices are listed here. I'm not going to get into happy hour here. That there's enough there to talk about in a whole other discussion, but this is where you get a quick read on your different happy hour prices. Product type, that helps you organize your happy hour a little bit better. If, like, say, every other day you want wines to be on happy hour, but not beers, etc. One other thing, I'm going to go into one of the products here. We've been getting some questions from customers. This is a fairly new field, which is a VAT rate. Again, as I mentioned previously, we have locations in other parts of the world, and what a VAT rate is essentially sales tax for like everywhere else in the world. North America uses sales tax. Most other countries in the world use VAT rate. So this can't be left blank, unfortunately, but for us here in the States, it can always just...
Victor from Tower Taproom is asking, does that include when the products are loaded directly from Untapped?
Which aspect?
I think it was
It's referring to when we add new beers in Untapped. Untapped automatically ports the information over to you all and PourMyBeer, and then it goes into Toast automatically in our system because I have both of those integrations with Untapped and Toast. So if I have a beer that's called Pale Ale by two different breweries, I basically need to make sure that I need to go into PourMyBeer and change the name. Is that what you're saying? Correct. When you're saying that products having similar names? Okay.
Correct. That when it comes to Toast, the PLUs might also differentiate it, but I would, just to make sure, I would change the name. We're going to go back to the database management. Obviously, my database is pretty small, as I only use this database to build databases for other customers. But when this thing gets pretty unruly and you got 300, 400, 500 beers in here, and you need to find a particular beer or type of beer, you have all of your filters up here. A lot of folks kind of look these over, and they're pretty powerful. Only active is a good one. It lets you isolate a specific product without having to page through all your beers. However, the clear button or the clear filter button is very important. I've had more than one call where someone's like, "Oh no, I did something and now my product database is empty," and they just needed to hit clear. Whenever you're using your filters, which I recommend doing, they're, like I said, they're very powerful. Make sure you hit clear filter to get all of your products back into the main list, and don't worry, they're not deleted or anything. So that leads right into having a database that's very large. Like I said, I'm recognizing some names in here, and some of these locations have very big, unwieldy databases. And what that can do is it can dramatically increase your configuration update times, almost exclusively because of your images. Whether it be pulling from Untapped, which we grab their high quality image, mostly because the low quality ones are ugly, to be honest. So we grab the high quality images from Untapped with our Beerboard Gateway tool, and obviously folks that are manually uploading that stuff want to have the nice, crisp, clear picture of what the product is going to be, so it looks decent on the screen. That all makes sense. However, when you have larger databases, 100, 200, 300 products, you also have 100, 200, 300 images. And when it comes to making those configuration updates, that is where the time for each update gets increased. When the configuration update button is pressed, everything goes out to the screen. It's not you only changed this one word in this one description, so we're only going to send that. It sends every configuration, all of the client settings, the product database, all of your backgrounds, everything gets fired off at once. And where that can increase in time is transferring these images. Obviously, transferring data is not super hard, but when you start getting into many decently high-res images, that can just take time. And what we can do to help mitigate that is managing which of our products is set to active and which of our products is set to inactive. What that means is if a product is sent to active, it will be sent in every configuration update, and it will also be available for selection at your screens. If it is set to inactive, still in the database, lives there. Nothing changes, but it is not sent when a configuration update is sent, and it is not available to be selected at this. In my experience, having, like, let's say you have 30 taps, I think having up to 60 products active is fine. That's going to keep a background or a backup for every single tap plus all of your 30 active beers, obviously. Maybe 90, at least double what you got. I know for some of our bigger locations that still means you'll have 150 products active, and that is what it is. But keeping that as trim as is reasonable will really help cut down on your configuration update times. And in terms of setting a bulk amount of products to inactive, the PourMyBeer support team can help with that. We can kind of just go into the database and set everything to active and then reactivate the products that you need to have active instead of going through 15 pages of products and hitting set inactive. Okay, wait for the page to load, go to the next one, go to the next. We can do that pretty quickly through a database browser. Speaking of which, as I just did on the screen, setting a product to inactive is super easy. It's just pressing this button right here. And that will set it to inactive, which means, again, it's still in the database. It's not going anywhere, but it is going to not be sent with a configuration update and will not be available for selection out of the screen. Very good for seasonal beers, like your pumpkin heads and such. Have them up for Halloween and then turn them off for a year, so they're around for the next round. Speaking of images, we all like to have our nice images. We do have a recommended pixel size. The database is pretty good about resizing images, so I tend to not worry about the dimensions. Obviously, if it's over 5 megs, it will not. You'll get an error. Say, hey, you can't use that. Also, the database only supports JPEGs and PNGs. I recommend PNGs. They support transparencies, so you're not going to have like a harsh white border around your product image here. So it'll kind of just blend into the background nicely. And I push PNGs wherever you can get them. The untapped integration will pull down PNGs for the most part. There are a few exceptions, but it's usually going to pull down a nice high quality PNG. If you don't have untapped, we recommend it. Obviously, it's not a great fit for everyone, but it is a big time saver. Just makes it so you don't have to manually add products. This is my database builder that I use for making customer databases. I need to, it only takes a handful of minutes to add all of these products. It grabs the images. This is all information that is pulled from Untapped. Let's see here. Let's add Miller Lite. There's Miller Lite. And then I'm going to pop in here. I'm going to give it a 1 ounce container size. Let's say it's 30 cents. One thing I did learn pretty recently is that you can actually upload your own label image into your menu. Say if you want a different Miller Lite logo, or if the logo on Untapped is out of date. I had a conversation with a customer about that a few weeks ago, where the product that they were pulling down from Untapped was an outdated logo, and they were trying to figure out the best way to update a new logo. You can just hit remove, and you can then upload your own logo, or if you have a better one from the distributor, or whatever the case may be, you can, instead of trying to change it in the database, you can actually change it here. If you're using the Untapped integration, that will pull down that image. You can edit all these as you see fit. I'm just going to save that item. And now this product will be added into my database the next time the product sync runs. Again, I'm not going to do that right now, but this tool allows you to quickly make up your product database with good images. It's pulling in all the information. Obviously, this is only going to work for products that are in the Untapped database, which is it's a very large database and it's curated pretty closely. I haven't run into a lot of things that aren't in here, short of like wines or kombucha or very specific collaborations between locations and breweries. Obviously, those aren't, if it's a one-off, doing this for Friday night, that might not make it into the Untapped database, which that will have to be added manually into your PourMyBeer product database. But for a lot of your normal, hey, these are out on the market beers, the Untapped database is most likely going to have it. And we push it pretty hard to get this connection with Untapped. It's such a big time saver. It does require a Untapped for Business account, which Tanya, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's $500 or $600 a year or something. But you're more than making that up in the time that you're saving in managing your database for sure.
For the PourMyBeer family member, they also give first month for free. That's $50 cheaper every year.
A big one that is a little more complicated is those items that I mentioned that are not in the Untapped product database, your wines, your kombuchas. There was a time where both Untapped and us supported a custom menu that you could build in Untapped, and that would then pull those products in, which allowed you to kind of curate your database a little bit better. Unfortunately, there were some bugs that were introduced in the last kind of release of the Beerboard Gateway, and those bugs still exist. Carl and I are typing furiously over these past few weeks to try to get those issues fixed, or maybe kind of redesign how that whole system. But for right now, that's kind of, unfortunately, that is one we can't address, but that is a question I get pretty regularly.
Hey, I do have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. So in my physical space, I do have the Untapped configuration, and that's been great and everything. But I'm also working on a mobile operations that doesn't have like Wi-Fi connectivity, so I'll be doing things manually. Mm-hmm. Are there any, like, we've added things manually before in the store, but are there any other, I don't know, big red flags or big don't do's that I should be aware of when we're adding everything manually?
Naming conventions, in terms of like, oh my goodness, this isn't going to work. Not really. The system will tell you when it isn't going to work. Like if you're trying to use a PLU that's been used, it's not going to work. If you try to upload an incompatible image, it's not going to work. It will just error and say, hey, that's not going to work. Try a different image. If you are not entering all of the pricing data that you need, it will say, hey, you need to enter something here, be it 0 or something. It is going to give you that. But naming conventions, when you're doing things manually, I think naming conventions are the big ones. Just, are you going to name it brewery and then the product, or are you just going to give it the product name, or how are you going to manage that so everyone can quickly find the product they need to assign to the tap? Because in the product database, products are organized by PLU number, and out at the screens where you actually select them to the taps, they are set by alphabet. So it's just, there's a little bit of cross, things get a little confusing there sometimes for some folks when they're doing stuff manually. So having a decent naming convention and getting a decent image to upload manually are big challenge.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And I see the note here from Scott. I think a training session on Untapped would be useful. It isn't as self-explanatory as you would think. I agree that sometimes it's not, Scott, as easy to use like right off the get-go, but Untapped, they specifically have like a demo request, and they do have a head of accounts that will take you through, especially as you're obviously becoming a customer and you say like, hey, I'm with PourMyBeer, I do want to sign up for my paid business account, they will give you the tutorial themselves. The problem with what is PourMyBeer you're dealing with is that there's so much to train the new PourMyBeer family members on, that we're trying to keep it as simple as possible for people's brain at the beginning when they're just becoming operators. So throwing it on top to it, I think it might be just a little too much. What do you think, Jason?
It really depends on which aspect. In terms of like the menu, displaying and publishing, and the social aspect of Untappd, our system doesn't really touch any of that. Like Tanya said, that's more of a Untappd, like their folks can help with that. We're just using it as a really quick way to get products. And some locations, that's all they use it for. They don't have a menu on a television anywhere. They just have it to connect into our menu, to connect into our database to manage their product.
So I guess I'm talking about when you update PourMyBeer from Untappd. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to. It finally dawned on me yesterday to publish and find that menu on the far left-hand side that says publish, unpublished menu. No one's ever explained those things, and you end up fighting through this thing trying to update your beer board. You know what I mean? And it would have been so nice if somebody would have pointed out, go to menus, look for unpublished, click on unpublished, and publish. That's what you got to do to transmit it over to the beer wall. So it's little things like that in Untappd that are super frustrating. And there really isn't a lot of support. It's a wonderful program. I do love it. It's been difficult for a tech challenge guy like myself to fight through it.
I'll take it. Feedback is good.
Yeah, any feedback is great. We appreciate it, Scott. Little creepy what it looks like in the chat. It's like I'm chatting here with myself, but Josh is logged into my account. So he is asking, could you touch on the type of product and why that's important for future reporting, Jason? For example, sale by beer, sale by wine, cocktails, non-alcohol.
Sure. And
if you can show where you can change the type in the database so everybody can do that to be aware, that would be amazing. And thanks, Tanya Rolkova, for that question.
So in terms of the type of beer, as Tanya's doppelganger mentioned, setting it to what actual type of product it is has kind of manifold benefits. It's good for, as I mentioned previously, managing your happy hour in case you want to manage happy hour by a type of product, like wines have a bigger discount or less of a discount than beer, etc. But it also, during future reporting, you'll be able to check out reports by product. So like, hey, how are my beers selling? How are my wines selling? How are my sodas selling? How are my cocktails selling? And you can get just a healthier breakdown of the different type of product, or how your different types of products are selling. And to set that, it's as easy as going into the product and then hitting your product type, setting it to beer. Press your save button, and then press your send config update notification button. And we can see here that it is set to beer, and you can set that accordingly. Get all your stuff sorted out. The most immediate benefit is for the happy hour stuff. I know some folks don't use happy hour, but it can be a pretty powerful tool for that as well.
Thank you, everyone, so much for attending. We will be holding these once a month, as I mentioned, in the Facebook group post and in your newsletter. For the next topic, we will actually do a poll in our PourMyBeer family group, so that way we know what is the hottest topic that everybody wants to talk next. But hopefully we can cover a lot of them throughout the year. And again, thanks everyone for coming. If you have any questions after the session, as always, don't hesitate to either chat us in the PourMyBeer family group or just send an email to support. We're always happy to help. No question is a bad question. There's always something behind it. So definitely encourage that. And thanks so much, everyone. Have a happy Tuesday and stay healthy, stay well. Bye, guys.